You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi everybody, and thanks for dropping by again to listen to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. This is episode number 131 and the last of the normal shows that I'll be putting out for some time. Next Monday, February the 25th, I'll be getting on a plane in the glorious warmth of Sarasota and flying to Atlanta, where I'll be setting out on my second through hike of the Appalachian Trail the very next morning, Tuesday the 26th. Then, with a bit of luck, 5 million uninjured steps and some spectacular weight loss later, I'm going to emerge at the top of Katahdin, weeping uncontrollably with the pure emotion of my journey. If that scenario does work out, you can join me on my journey with twice weekly podcasts from the trail in the same way that I podcasted from the Camino de Santiago last October. I really hope you want to come along with me. But for today, we've got a full normal episode. But even this is somewhat transitional, as we finished our book reading last week, and I'm waiting until I return from the trail before reading Hiking Through by Paul Stutzman, so no book today. However, I think I've come up with a pretty good show nonetheless. First up, and as our main guest today, we have Megan Dolman and Mark Bychowski. Megan's a Brit and Mark is an American. They started on the same day, didn't know each other, and, well, their stories became a little intertwined, let me say. I'll leave it to Megan and Mark to explain what happened next. After Megan and Mark, I've brought a good friend of the Hiking Radio Network to the show. Bruce Matson, with whom I shared a podcast, returning to Katahdin last year, is back for the 1-year anniversary of his own through hike starting, and we're chatting about how his fundraising for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy went last year. He's also going to tell us about a new project he's been working on that will also help the ATC. Finally, he'll be giving me some last-minute advice as I head out next week. And the last item of the show this week, I know that a lot of you offered me advice on my choices for this year's hike, and I settled on a Z-Packs tent and backpack. So I thought I'd ask the Z-Packs about these items, and I have their brand manager, and as it turns out, their second employee, Matt Details Favreau, to talk about the company and its products. Matt will be on after Bruce. So let's get started with Megan Dolman and Mark Bychowski. Megan wrote to me a few weeks ago and she mentioned, almost in passing, something that piqued my interest. Let's hear the story of Megan and Mark. So today we've got something of an oddity for you. I'd like to introduce you to Megan Dolman and Mark Bychowski. Is it Bychowski? Bychowski.
It's Bychowski.
Bychowski, okay. Yeah. Shows you how useless I am at that. Megan is in and from the UK, and Mark is in and from America. So, hi guys, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good, thank you. And I want to start with you, Megan. I'd like you to tell us how you got on the trail and how much hiking you've done before and where the two of you met each other.
So, I started the trail 5th March. I had done a little bit of hiking before I left. Not in practice as such. But as a family, I hiked the coast to coast walk across England in 2013. Nice. That's about 200 miles.
Yeah.
And I'd done a few bits of kind of like week-long hikes with some friends. And I started on the 5th of March and I kind of got dropped off at Springer parking lot. And I didn't kind of realise you had to hike a mile up to actually start the hike. So that was an interesting way to go.
Yeah.
And I hiked about 8 miles and then met Mark at the Hawk Mountain Shelter campsite. And as I was walking in, he was walking out, and I just kind of introduced myself to him, and we kind of had a little chat, and then he left to go and meet some people because he was lonely, apparently.
Ah, right. So your lack of knowledge of the AT, so you obviously had to put some gear together. I suspect the gear for the AT was entirely different to the gear that you needed for the coast-to-coast trail. How did you go about getting your gear?
I sourced most of it from the US, actually. I spent some time in Wyoming before I started planning my stuff for my hike, and I got my tent from there and my quilts, which I had specially made and then shipped over,
wow.
My sleeping pad, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, I did have a backpack already, but I decided to upgrade and get a new one. So I got that from my parents as a finishing my undergraduate degree present, which was quite lovely.
Nice. So what was your start weight? Or did you weigh your pack before you started?
I didn't actually, but I think it was around 25 pounds.
What, with food and water?
No.
I was going to say, because...
No. I had so many things I didn't necessarily need, like bear spray, and I had lots of extra clothing because I didn't want to be cold, and I had a pillow.
Please tell me you said bear spray, not hairspray.
Bear spray, yeah.
Yes, okay, that might be, yeah. And were you physically fit at the time you started?
Not particularly. I've never really liked exercise or kind of being fit, so not really. I do a lot of walking, but I hadn't kind of done anything in preparation for this hike. I mean, where I live is completely flat, so there's nowhere you can kind of emulate what there is on the trail.
Tell me about it. I live in Florida, and I'm preparing for going hiking the trail.
Yeah.
And trust me, there is nothing like it. We've got one bridge nearby we can walk over, but that's about it. And the same for you then, Mark. What was your hiking background, and what do you remember about that first day on the trail?
Yeah, so I'm actually from Virginia, kind of right where the trail crosses in Daleville, Virginia, where the McAfee's Knob area is.
Yep.
So I've hiked a lot growing up. I've done a lot of hiking just on the AT. Pretty much most of the AT in Virginia I've done at some point in my life.
Right.
I was a Boy Scout when I was growing up, so I've hiked a ton and camped a bunch. So I think I've had a lot of experience. I've done some hiking in Peru. I've done some hiking in Switzerland and stuff. So I've had a good amount of experience.
So how long have you wanted to do the AT then?
Most of my life, being from like the Roanoke area, I've known through hikers. I've seen through hikers my whole life. Right. I've got a lot of experience around the AT. So I've kind of always wanted to do it. It's kind of always been a goal of mine to do at some point in my life.
So the image of the grey pallor and the sunken cheeks really appealed to you somehow.
Yeah, I don't know why, but a couple of my friends actually did it last year. There was a couple, Becca and Derek, that hiked with their 1-year-old baby, and watching them do it just made me want to do it even more.
I'm sure.
So I had that itch, and I had to finally do it. So
yeah, once you got to do it, you got to do it.
Yeah,
as you're a regular hiker, were you quite fit, and your gear, I presume, was already established from your previous hiking then, was it?
Yeah, so my gear was pretty nailed down when I started. I've kind of narrowed it down over the years, and I've purchased a few final things like a quilt and stuff before I left. So my gear was good. I was happy with my gear choices and stuff. I was in pretty good shape, I would say. I had about a month off between when my job ended and when I was going to start hiking. So I had that whole full month beforehand to kind of get in shape. And,
right.
I was pretty much out hiking almost every day.
So you were ready to go, and really, Megan, you weren't quite ready to go in terms of the
not
physicality
really.
of it.
I had the mental attitude there, but no, physicality not at all.
Right. So the two of you, well, Mark, you tell us, why are we recording both of you together then, as you come from different countries and you met independently on the trail?
Yeah. So as Megan said, we both met on the very first day off of Springer Mountain. I got there a little bit earlier than she did, but we met the first day, and after 162 days of hiking together or whatever, we are now together. Me and Megan are dating and in love, I guess.
That is so, by the way, that nervous laughter of saying in love, I guess I should really edit out, but I'm going to keep it in just so you can remember that one. It's a really nice one. So what did you, and I think that's amazing. Megan wrote to me, and just almost as a afterword, when she wrote to me about something else to do with the show, she said about the meeting each other and you being together. I think that's so unusual, meeting each other on the trail. So you were in Hawk Mountain Shelter. Why were you there for so long and by yourselves? That's the bit I didn't understand originally. You said you were there, and was it because you didn't do the approach trail, either of you?
Yeah, neither of us did the approach trail. And Mark started a few hours earlier. I think he was quite eager. So he got to the Hawk Mountain Shelter about 3:00 in the afternoon and hadn't met anyone. So it was kind of lonely. And that was why when I met him, he was actually walking out of the shelter. He told me that he wanted to go and hike some more to go and meet people.
Right.
I was like, okay.
So what happened then? So did you just hang around then, Mark?
Yeah, well, so as I was leaving, we actually stayed at the Hawk Mountain campsite, which is about a half mile short of the shelter. Yeah. So I had been there for a couple hours with my tent set up. I had been told by people that it was going to be pretty full. There was going to be people there. And so I was there and I was ready. I wanted to meet people. And I just sat there for literally 2 or 3 hours and nobody came, just completely by myself. And I was like, what is this? This is crazy. So I finally just decided to get up and walk to the shelter, which is about a half mile farther up the trail.
Oh, right.
Because I was like, well, somebody's got to be at the shelter. And as I was walking out, Megan was walking in, and she was the very first person that I spoke to on the entire trail. She just kind of introduced herself, said hi, and I was like, hey, I'm set up my tent down there, but nobody's here, so I'm just going to head off and meet some people if I can, because I've just been here for hours. And so, yeah, we said hi. Megan went and set her stuff up, and I headed up to the shelter to see if anybody was up there.
So did you then follow him there, or did you set up at the campground, Megan?
No, I set up at the campground. It took me quite a while to figure out what I was doing. A lot of kind of curse words involved, and yeah, it was
right too.
Yeah,
very,
not crying.
Very British. Oh,
yeah.
crying as well. Excellent.
Oh yeah, and it was quite
First
nice
day
to
crying.
be on my. Oh yeah, no, definitely. It was quite nice to be on my own. To kind of, it felt a lot more real. And then after about 3 or 4 hours, he kind of returned, and then we ate dinner together.
Oh. Why did you return, Mark? Why did you return,
Yeah.
This cute young British bird. Why did you return?
It was really funny because up at the shelter, it was actually full. It was completely full up at the shelter. And there were people that had packed out pounds of hot dogs and just like the most ridiculous things you could imagine that they had packed out for the first few days. And they had way too much food and they were exhausted. So they were just giving out food. So up at the shelter, I had like 3 hot dogs and all kinds of just goodies that people had packed out that didn't know.
You didn't bring in.
So I was completely full, and I was happy. So I headed back down to the shelter, or to the campground where Megan was, and I think she was still the only one there when I got down there, which was crazy.
All right. Yeah. Cool. So what did you? I presume there must have been some instant attraction between the two of you. Was it like that for both of you?
I think it was probably like that for me. Yeah, I didn't really know what on earth I was doing. So things like just hanging a bear bag and showing me how to kind of actually set up my tent properly, all the stuff that I didn't really know what I was doing, he could kind of show me. So I certainly liked that aspect of it. Yeah, I probably, like day of 4 or 5, I was kind of quite smitten, I think.
Oh, wow. That's something. I think this is so unusual, though. If you think about it, it's kind of just like the serendipitous nature of the Appalachian Trail, isn't it? Stuff happens all the time on the trail. You think, why did that happen? It just kind of did, didn't it?
Yeah.
And so had either of you thought about actually hiking the approach trail and then change your mind, because your trajectory and your meeting may have been delayed or not even happened at all had one of you hiked it, mightn't it?
Yeah, I don't think either of us actually entertained that notion. I think both of us had a look and kind of realised that it was much more difficult than we kind of imagined. So yeah, I remember having conversations early on and both of us said we were going to hike that. So.
Yeah, no, I had researched plenty beforehand and definitely had no intention of doing the approach trail. I just heard so much about all the steps and stuff, and it doesn't count towards your miles. So, when we're sitting on top of Katahdin, we're not going to be like, oh, we didn't do the approach trail. So
yeah, well, I did do the approach trail. One certainty is I will not be doing it this time.
Yeah.
I feel I've done it. So there you were, spending the night at the Hawk Mountain campground. So what was that first evening like? You were sitting around eating on that, and I know you had a really cold start in 2018. Was it cold that night particularly?
Yeah, it started raining at about 7 o'clock, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it rained the first night, which was a good awakening.
Yes, it is.
It wasn't too cold though.
No, I don't remember.
It was fairly mild at the beginning, but it rained right away, which was welcome to AT. Here's some rain this night. So
yes, depending upon people's starts, either the beginning of February or beginning of March or even late January, some people had such a different experience, didn't they? Mm-hmm. And so you had a lot of rain around that time as well, didn't you? Were you either of you daunted by the forecast, or did you just think, well, this is what it is and this is where we go?
I think I was prepared for the weather that was coming, as much as you can be prepared for the weather that was coming. I knew that we were going to get wet and be wet for, 5 or 6 months. Yeah. But there's only so much you can really prepare for, really, when it comes down to that, especially when it's that cold. It's dangerous when it's wet.
Cold and wet's a terrible combination.
Oh, yeah. When it's 35 degrees and raining, and it's dangerous. So I was as prepared as I could be. But like I said, there's only so much you can do.
How did you cope with that? As a matter of interest, did you? What you say you were prepared as you could be. You're right. That combination of really cold temperatures and rain is pretty devastating, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And what did you have to? What were you wearing to combat that?
I had I had a fleece layer. I had a long sleeve wool layer. I had my puffy, and I had a rain jacket too. And I found myself wearing all of them multiple times at the beginning, just because it was so cold. We had a few really just frigid days at the beginning. So
So leaving camp the next morning, had you already decided to start hiking together, Megan, or is that something you naturally all got up together, people at the campground all headed out together, or did you and Mark just pack up and start heading out together?
Mark actually asked me the night before we started. He was like, "Oh, well, do you want to hike together tomorrow?" And then I think you suggested something like 6:30, some ridiculously early time to get up and start hiking, which I was not really prepared for, but I kind of agreed with anyway.
You must have liked him.
So I took a lot longer to kind of pack everything up. That maintained throughout the entire trail. I always took far longer to pack everything up than he did. So I think he was waiting around for a bit before I
don't know. In that case, I got a horrible feeling that could be a British thing then, because I was terribly getting out of camp. I don't know why. I remember once deliberately waking up first and trying to get out first. And I was still the last to leave camp. I just couldn't believe it.
Yes, I completely agree. Yeah, there were a few days where I did make effort to kind of be ahead of him, and it never happened.
It actually got to the point where I would wait until I heard Megan up and moving, and I'd still just lay in my tent for a good half hour before I started moving, and then I'd still be done before she would be.
Yeah, because this circus ain't going nowhere yet. I don't
time. It was good.
So that's kind of, do you want to hike together tomorrow? That quickly became permanent, Mark? You were hiking together, you just carried on hike together?
We met a lot of people those first few days, and there were a bunch of super nice people and stuff, but I just didn't get along with a lot of them like I got along with Megan, so we just kept going. We just, hey, let's keep hiking. We didn't really have any plans, so we just figured we'd go until, whatever, see what happened.
So how did other hikers see you then? Were you a couple to them, or did you become part of a larger sort of trail family?
I think early on, I don't think anybody thought of us as a couple, like actually dating, because she was very obviously, British. And
really?
Yeah.
Even I noticed that accent.
Yeah, so I don't think anybody saw us as a couple early on, but they knew that we were hiking together and stuff, and so they started identifying us as, Mark and Megan that hiked together. We didn't have trail names yet because it was early, so people started calling us M&M because Mark and Megan hiking together.
Of course, yes.
So it was, we saw a lot of people that we knew pretty continuously over the first few weeks, and they were just like, "Oh, M&M," and we would meet people along the way. They were like, "Oh, you guys are M&M." We had never seen them before, and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. Did you eventually get trail names?
Yes, we did. Yeah, I was Giggles.
Right.
Yeah, and I was Pepperjack.
Come on then. Why were you Giggles, Megan?
I think mine was, fairly self-explanatory. I think in the beginning I laughed an awful lot. I think towards the end less so, especially because I had British humour and he had American humour, so there was a lot of kind of contention there. But
that's one of the things I kind of wanted to ask you. Did you find the cultural? Let's face it, Americans and Brits get together all the time, but did you find cultural differences more challenging out there because you're spending the whole time with him?
Not so much cultural differences, but I think just the language that we used. Like, pants and trousers, that's, one of the basic example. And just trying to figure out what each other meant. And even now we're still doing that if he says something and I kind of don't understand. And then we have to kind of find the same word, but in different, and it's the same English, but and culturally, I think he's quite similar to a lot of the views I have. So,
but certainly the humour is very different.
The humour is different. The humour is different. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You've only got to look at the TV comedy shows over in the US and TV comedy shows over in the UK to see the difference as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I watched the entire episode of the US Office with Mark on the trail, and the humour was completely different to the British Office.
Totally,
so that was sadly,
Yeah, you're right. So. And when you got hiking, are you similarly paced hikers? I'm guessing that you're not, because if you've done quite a bit of hiking, Mark, you probably, certainly at least in the beginning, you probably had to slow down a little bit, didn't you? Or did you tend to just hike apart and then get together at the end of the day? How did that work out in terms of pace?
So actually, I think that a lot of the reason that we stayed together towards the beginning was because of our pace.
All right.
Yeah, because I guess Megan's a bit shorter than I am, and not too short, but she's a bit shorter than I have a longer pace and such. But for the most part, we would hike pretty similarly together throughout most of the day. There would be times when we would be separate and stuff, but we would pretty much keep a fairly similar pace. Even if we weren't, talking or we were listening to music, whatever, we would still be pretty close together. So I think that's part of the reason why we enjoyed hiking together also, just because we were kind of on the same pace the whole time. So
yeah. I must say, whenever I saw two people hiking together, I always felt that the person who was second was hiking at the wrong pace because they were going at the pace of the first person. I mean, that's kind of almost obvious. Did one of you lead the way sometime and then the other one take over?
Yeah, it really mixed, actually, really varied. I think uphills, I would normally stop and just make a fuss, and he would just get on with it and lead me to it. Whereas with downhills, I like to fly downhill, so I would leave Mark at the top.
Yeah, I've got old man knees, and I can't keep up downhill. She would leave me behind downs.
Describe to me making a fuss, Megan, but I think I know what you mean.
Just standing at the bottom, looking up, thinking I can't do it, and expressing that in words, and Mark would just leave me. So to be like, get on with it.
Because he knew you could.
Yeah,
and it's funny, actually.
And I could.
Exactly, yeah. It struck me, and I had the same feeling at the bottom of every single bloody mountain that came up. I always thought to myself, I haven't failed to get over one yet, and that continued throughout the whole hike. It looks impossible, doesn't it? You've got all these false summits. You think, I must be at the top soon. Yeah. And suddenly there's another forest above you. It's just a nightmare, isn't it? And you eventually get there.
I agree. Yeah.
Now, I know that your mother flew out to hike with you, Megan. What happened to Mark when your mother came out?
He actually stayed with us for 2 days, and we hiked together.
Nice.
And then he didn't live too far away from where I was meeting my mum, so he kind of hiked off on his own and did stupid long days. I think he did like 28 30-mile days to get home quickly, and then I stayed on the trail with Mum for about a week and a half, I think.
All right.
Yeah, which was really, really lovely.
So how did you cope with those tough times when the only person you can blame is the person standing right next to you? Because, as I said, from what you told us before, you did get a little emotional from time to time. So how were you, because we all get these tough times on the trail, how did you cope with each other when you were both still new to each other, when one of you got a bit more, a bit out of sorts with things, let's say?
I think we tended to give each other quite a bit of space. We had the first few weeks, we didn't listen to music at all. We just kind of chatted. And when we got to that point where we both struggled, we both put music in and just didn't really kind of speak to each other. And that worked out really well, actually, because I think music or a podcast or whatever can kind of get you through tricky situations.
Did you really?
That's
interesting. That's interesting. So why do you think that?
I love music. It's always been a huge part of my life. And it just really distracted me from the task that I was doing, and it gave me something to kind of focus to, if it was a rhythm or a song that I liked with the lyrics or something like that. And I think music is quite a big part of Mark's life too, so it just kind of works, I think.
So, of course, you're finding out different tastes as well, aren't you, I presume? He's doing this as well, Not that flipping English music again and all that sort of,
Our tastes were pretty similar, actually. It was pretty surprising.
And did either of you sustain any injuries on the trail or face any potential trail-ending circumstances at all?
Well, we both lost both of our pinky toenails on both feet, which is pretty common. People lose toenails.
I lost all 10. I lost all 10 of my nails. Yep.
Did you really? Oh, wow. So, we got pretty lucky. A lot of people lost a lot more than us. So we lost some toenails. I know I got some nerve damage in all my toes. So all my toes were fuzzy and couldn't feel them for a couple months after the trail.
Yeah.
We both took, Megan more so than myself, took a number of falls. They could have been bad, but didn't turn out to be anything too serious. A lot of cuts and bruises and scrapes and stuff. But for the most part, we did pretty well. We had some, just wear and tear on our knees and joints and stuff. But other than that, I took a few falls too, and we turned out all right. It was
Did you talk at the time? Because as you're getting to know each other and you suddenly realise this is becoming more of a permanent thing, do you talk at the time about what you might do if one did get injured, or did you not even discuss that? You just carried on and wait and see what happens?
I don't think we discussed that at all, actually.
Yeah, I don't think we ever really did. I don't think it really ever crossed our minds that we might get hurt to the point of, missing. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I don't think we ever really talked about it.
I think both of you were, you told me earlier, you said you were very stubborn, Megan, and you were very determined, Mark. So you were going to get to the end of this almost, whatever happened. But it does take just one fall, doesn't it? One you land your foot badly one time, that could be it, couldn't it? So you were, to a degree, you're quite lucky. You both finished. Yes,
we
exactly.
were extremely lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were both, I would say more so than the average person, very careful about everything we do, and it's good for such a long trail because, it just, like you said, it just takes one little slip to end the entire thing. Yeah. I actually met a lady coming south that had broken her ankle and had to get helicoptered out. just from one little slip in Maine, and it's all it takes. You just one little misstep,
Yes.
and there goes the whole trail.
Nightmare. So let's talk about New Hampshire, Maine, and of course Katahdin. And as I understand it, by then you still hadn't talked much about any future together because you both wanted to get to Katahdin. But as the end drew closer, did either of you worry that perhaps this was just a trail romance and not destined to last beyond the AT, or did you then start talking about, well, what might happen later, or did you just still not talk about it even then?
I don't think we really spoke about it until after we finished. I certainly thought about it, but I don't think I really voiced it because both of our goals, and we both came there to hike solo, so our goals were to reach Katahdin, and I didn't kind of want a romance or relationship to kind of impede that.
Sure. Did it become a joint goal then? You want to, because I know that when you meet people on the trail, and I'm sure, and I'm going to talk about those people you met on the trail in a minute, but when you meet people on the trail, they want your success almost as much as they want their success, don't they? There's such a giving attitude on the trail because you then had a joint, you both wanted to summit together, so you probably had that in mind as well, didn't you?
I think so. I don't remember exactly where along the line, but at some point it definitely became clear that we were shooting to summit together. I would say probably before even halfway, we were talking pretty regularly about like, oh, when we're going to summit together, and when we do like this and this, and like we were planning on summiting Katahdin side by side because we had done the first 1,000 miles by completely with each other, so we weren't going to do the second half without. So yeah, I think it. I don't know if we ever fully discussed it, but we were so part of each other's lives at that point that it was going to happen.
Yeah, it's funny actually. I was thinking back, there's somebody who's talking to me about getting halfway the other day, and getting halfway, you suddenly step over that halfway mark, you think, oh my God, I've got to do the same thing all over again.
And more.
And I can't remember. I don't believe I did think of Katahdin at all until about 500 or 600 miles to go, because it seems so far out of reach when you first start, doesn't it?
It seemed for me quite unachievable, I think, because I tend to have quite a negative attitude, and I feel like until I actually saw Katahdin, it wasn't kind of real. It was just this kind of big mountain that I was going to meet at some point in the future.
But then you do see it, don't you? Yeah. But is it Lake Pemmundumcock or something like that?
Yeah.
Yes, it's across the lake, and you see this vast block. You're still about 40 trail miles away from it by then, I believe. Yeah. It's quite an amazing sight, isn't it?
Oh, it was amazing. I cried a lot at that moment. Yeah, it was very, very emotional.
It sounds like you faced a lot of tears from your girlfriend, Mark, on these early days.
Yeah. It was emotional.
Yeah. Were you speeding up, or were you slowing down as you closed in on Katahdin? Because a lot of people don't want it to be over by then. So what was it for you? What was it like for you? Were you rushing to it, or were you trying to slow down?
We actually had one of my friends family friends hiking with us the last week and a half before Katahdin. And he was hiking at insane paces and speeds. So we were actually pushing harder to kind of catch up with him. Wow. So, yeah, I think we probably did do bigger miles than we intended.
Yeah, I think, as you know, like southern Maine especially was just so difficult. Yes. And there's so few like really good views. Like the 100-mile wilderness was incredible. It was much more enjoyable, much more laid back. Lakes and streams and stuff. I wish that we had, a little bit more time there. But southern Maine was just awful. And I know that me and Megan and most of the people that were around us at that time, we had a lot of rain, and we just wanted to get through southern Maine. It was pretty rough. So I think we were kind of ready to be done by the time we hit southern Maine, because we had a rough stretch there for a while. But the 100-mile wilderness, like I said, was just incredible, and I'd love to go back at some point.
I did southern Maine in decent weather, so I had fantastic views. I just absolutely loved it up there. It did. So let's talk about the day itself. Was it kind of all joy at Baxter, followed by the summit, or were you kind of sad that it was all over?
I think I was quite sad. We ended up getting up really early because we knew that there was weather rolling in. So we were actually up on Katahdin by about 8 o'clock. I think we started hiking about 5 that morning.
Oh, my word.
And the weather was gorgeous when we got up there. And then it kind of, the clouds rolled in about 40 minutes from being at the top. I think it was kind of quite anticlimactic for me. And especially when we returned down from Katahdin, we were in the parking lot, and it took us hours to leave the parking lot to get a ride out to hitch out. It took us forever. So that was a little bit dampening.
It was great to finally be there and see it, but it definitely was it was like, what do I do now? Type of thing. We've been walking for 6 months. It was. I don't really know if I knew how to react. It was a great relief and stuff. I was excited. I was happy, but it was like, well, now what do we do? And like Megan said, we had to hitchhike back into Millinocket, which took all day. And we were just like, we were so excited to be done, but now we couldn't get out of the park, and you can't stay at the Birches there. So it was rough.
So did you touch the sign together, or did you each give each other your own individual moments?
We did a little both.
You got up there first.
I got up there first. I actually filmed a video of the entire trail along the way. And so I got there first and filmed a little bit. Megan came up. I think I took some pictures of Megan. She took some pictures of me. And then we actually did take a few together because, we had to at that point after 2,000 miles.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And actually, the only other two people up at the top were two other Nobo thru hikers that had both started March 5th too.
Right. Wow.
And they were the only other two people up there. It was crazy. After that entire time, the four people up at the top were March 5th starts. It was crazy.
Did you remember them from?
Yeah, we had seen them at different points along the way. We would go 1,000 miles without seeing them, and then we'd see them again. It was crazy how it worked out.
That is crazy how it works.
Yeah.
And you're often hiking just within miles of each other, aren't you? And you just don't see each other.
Yeah.
Now, Mark, when we spoke before about this, and I take my notes down, so you said that all of your good memories revolved around Megan, which I thought was such a really cool thing to say. So apart, of course, from the lovely Megan, what were the best things about the trail for you?
Oh, I think when you're out there, pretty much if you're a thru hiker, if you're thinking about anything, you're thinking about food, which is because, your life revolves around food and sleep and walking.
Sure.
So a lot of my memories actually revolve around this meal and going here and eating here and stuff like that, because we were always looking forward to the next meal. Apart from the food, of course, the mountains and stuff were just incredible. I loved, the White Mountains were incredible. We had really good weather for like Mount Washington, and up above tree line there through the presidential rain, we had some incredible weather. So we could see for 100 miles in any direction.
Wow.
We had, where were we at? In North Carolina, the Rowan Highlands. We had just this beautiful snowy day where the snow coated the trees, but it was not too cold or anything. And it was just, again, up above tree line in the Highlands. It was just so pretty down there. That was one of the highlights of probably the southern 1,000 miles is the Rowan Highlands. So the scenery is just incredible.
Absolutely amazing. I quite agree. I love the balds in the south. Just walking over those meadows at the top of mountains was just extraordinary to me. I really love that. And you went in with very few expectations, Megan. So, because you said you actually didn't look at any vlogs or anything like that.
No.
So once again, apart of course from Mark again, what was it about the trail that you're going to remember as a highlight?
I think for me it was the landscapes. I hadn't really ever seen anything quite as vast. Although for the first 1,000 miles or whatever, I was really surprised by the fact that I was walking up these hills and I was still not seeing any views. So the White Mountains for me really stand out as being just incredible. And all of most of northern Maine, the 100-mile wilderness, as Mark mentioned earlier, I just really enjoyed that. Seeing that sort of scenery, I love nature, and that's kind of what I want to devote my life to, kind of studying that and preserving that. So kind of being in landscapes. Did
you see many animals on these landscapes? Did you see any moose or anything like that?
Oh, we didn't see moose. A lot of moose poop, but no moose.
Nice.
We encountered black bears in the Shenandoahs. We saw lots of snakes, which I didn't really appreciate. Lots of smaller birds and raptors and stuff like that.
It's great to see, isn't it? So, I loved seeing the animals in the wild. I remember, you passed through that zoo in New York, and I know I've mentioned this on the show before. I want to mention it again though. They've got a cage it's a quite a big compound with black bears, but they're brown and their fur's all matted and they're slow and lethargic. And yet you see the bears in the wild, aren't they magnificent?
They were amazing.
Just the way they move.
Yeah. We were kind of fortunate in a way that when we passed through that zoo, it was actually closed, so we had to walk around the outskirts, which was, I was quite relieved about that, because I didn't really want to see it.
Okay. So you were over there, I presume, on a visa, Megan, weren't you?
I was.
So how difficult was it? Because you must have returned pretty much straight after then to return to the UK. How difficult was it for you to return after spending all the time with the guy that you fell in love with?
It was quite difficult. Yeah, I actually spent 2 weeks in New York with my family, my younger sister, after I finished the trail. And then I returned home, and I was home for about a week before then starting my master's degree. And it was a really quick turnaround and kind of leaving the woods to then be in a city, to then be home and then be in another city.
Yes.
Yeah, it took a lot of adjustment, and I don't think I was really adjusted probably until the start of January this year. It took me a long time to kind of process it all and just, deal with it. And I also missed him a lot. So
yeah, I'm sure, and I'm sure you had the same. You had the same experience, didn't you, Mark? Because I know you went back home, but you fell in love with somebody, and suddenly you're apart.
Yeah, absolutely. Going from seeing somebody except for we were within a few miles of each other for 6 months straight.
Sure.
Saw each other, except for when we slept, we saw each other most of the day. Going from that to back to real life, where Megan, obviously I think she had it a lot harder than I did. She had to go straight back to Oxford, which is just unreal to me, going from being in the woods to Oxford.
Yes. Oxford's pretty special.
Yeah, for sure. That's much more difficult than but yeah, it was definitely a challenge having to leave somebody that you spent that much time with, and processing the trail anyways is such a difficult challenge after you go back to real life and just those memories and stuff. But then also having to leave Megan it's been pretty hard, but we've done really well. So
sure. Yeah. And did either of you experience that post-trail depression that seems so prevalent through hikers, or did you throw yourselves into something else straight away?
I don't know if I would class it as depression or not. I'm not sure. I certainly felt low at some points, but I feel like that was just getting into the swing of studying again and kind of dealing with being inside and having lectures rather than being outside and doing what I wanted to do.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I think I was quite lucky in that. And if I ever felt low about it, I'd speak to Mark, and he'd kind of always feel the same. It was quite difficult to relate to people and relay how intense the trail was, because people in the UK who hadn't experienced it just didn't really understand what I was talking about.
Well, he was probably thinking back to you at the bottom of a mountain complaining about it.
Yeah.
And he tells you to get on with it.
Yeah, just deal with it.
Exactly, quite right. So what happens next in this love story? I mean, you're in different countries. What do you have plans for the future?
So I am finishing my degree in September, and then I'm hoping to potentially move to the States in May next year. I'm hiking the Camino next year with my mum, which I understand you did.
I did. I did it in October this year. Yeah.
So
write to me. I'll tell you about it.
Yeah, I will. So hopefully try and move there in May next year, depending on if I can get a working visa or not. So.
Sure. Well, look, I'll tell you what, I am so delighted that you mentioned this to me, Megan, in that email, more of a throwaway remark, really. Yeah. So I'm so glad we talked about it, because I don't know, people say about, do people get together on the trail? Well, you met each other on the very first day and you're still together. How you've done it, I can't imagine. But, you did it, and I'm just so pleased the two of you are making a relationship work over the miles. So thanks so much for talking to me.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, you take it easy, and we will talk again sometime. Okay. And enjoy the Camino.
Yeah. Thank you. Good luck with your next hike.
Yeah. Cheers, Ed.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
I just noticed that I forgot to ask Mark about how he got his trail name Pepperjack. What a dope I am. Weren't they cute? I still don't understand quite how that happens, but really, how wonderful was that? Their individual endeavours became a joint goal, and I think that they seem to complement each other really well. That's the first love story we've had on the trail, and after last week showing some love to the ATC on Valentine's Day, I thought that this would be a great follow-up. I need to have a difficult conversation with you all before I head out on my great adventure. Talk about a party pooper, eh? Some of you may recall that we previously had a sponsor for both this show and for Returning to Katahdin, one of the other shows on the Hiking Radio Network. That sponsor was Trailtopia, and when our agreement came to an end, we parted, and we remain friends. Trailtopia are stepping up again this year to provide me with some of their delicious food for part of my trip. But as I'm recording this, I currently don't have a paying sponsor for the show. Funny enough, as I have been writing this today, I did get some exciting news, but I'm going to save that until the end of this. To some of you, I know, talk of payment for podcasts is absolute anathema. And for those of you who feel that way, rest assured, I'll still be doing the podcast, and I'll still be doing it for free. I won't be asking you to contribute to the show on Patreon, and I won't have any commercials, apart from the one I'm going to tell you about in a moment. However, what I'd like to ask is, if you think that this podcast adds value to you, your partner, or just the conversations around hiking, then I'd ask you if you'd put a small value on that. Let's be clear here. I'm not asking you to contribute to my hike. I've bought and paid for pretty much everything I'm taking, though I did get some free items when I attended the Outdoor Retailers show in Denver. And I've mentioned the generosity from Trailtopia when it comes to my food. No, I'm asking you to recognise that it takes a lot of time to put these shows together, and it also costs money. I'm out of pocket every single month before I record one word. I also have Ryan Hopkins helping me put these shows out, and while he doesn't ask for anything, I'd like to pay him something for his efforts. When I went to Europe after my Camino hike, I had intended to write a few books and pay my bills that way. While I'm at it, by the way, thanks to all of you who have bought my books. You've heard the story on the show, but supporting me by going out and still getting the books. No, in Europe, the podcast took so much of my time that I was rarely able to write, and certainly not consistently. Look, I love doing this podcast and the others that we have on the Hiking Radio Network. In fact, I'm looking to expand it, but I just wanted to ask if you value it as much as I enjoy doing it. When I finish my hike, I'll be back to podcasting weekly and introducing you to other extraordinary guests, many of whom have inspired you and me in the past, and I'm sure they will in the future. I also have plans, as I say, to expand the Hiking Radio Network to include several more shows. So, and this is the begging letter part, if you'd like to show your support for this and my other shows, why not donate by sending me a check made out to Mighty Blue Publishing for as small or as large an amount as you're comfortable with. I'm also hoping to add a donate button to my website where you can donate by PayPal, either a one-off payment or a small monthly sum, $2, $3, $4, $5, which you'll be able to cancel at any time. Somebody suggested I use a tip jar, like singers do in a pub. I may try to call it that when I add it to my site. If you do mail a check, please make it payable to Mighty Blue Publishing, 104 Capri Isles Boulevard, apartment number 302, Venice, Florida 34292. Now, there has been an update, as I mentioned earlier. This morning, Sawyer, whose new Sawyer Micro water filter I'm already taking to the trail, has agreed to sponsor the show from April for 2 months. I'm pretty pumped about that and suspect that they wanted to see if I could make the first month or so before spending the money. To be honest, that's a sensible decision on their part. So that will certainly help. I want to emphasise again, this show is going to remain on the air and it will be free. How you support it, if you do, will be entirely up to you. Thanks so much. Now moving on. Bruce Matson, or RTK, popped down to Florida recently and we had a beer together. I invited him to come back and chat with me about his great efforts last year in supporting the ATC. Here's Bruce. It's been a while since he finished the trail, but Bruce Matson, with whom I shared the Hiking Radio Network podcast, returning to Katahdin last year, he started his hike 1 year ago this coming Sunday, which is amazing to me. So first, Bruce, hi, and how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great as always. Thanks, Steve.
Cool. Well, isn't it hard to believe that it was a year ago that you were setting out?
Yes, it's really hard to believe it was a year ago. It's I was 6 months on the trail, and I've been home for 6 months.
Yeah, I always say to people, don't wish this away. It seems like a long time when you're out there, but it passes, in some ways, it passes in a flash as well, doesn't it?
You're absolutely right. And it does at times seem like it won't end. And, every day's not, as they say, rainbows and smiles.
Yeah.
But, you have to, enjoy every day because it does end sooner than you think. I remember you saying that you had all this time to think through life's biggest problems, and you got to Maine and you were running out of time. And,
yes.
and I had a similar experience where I was running out of time sooner than I anticipated.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I don't know why it is, but it's just we get that thing and just don't wish it away. Just enjoy it while it's there and just don't wish it away. That's what I'm saying. And I've invited you on today to give an update on your fundraising challenge, because I don't know how many people know this, but when you set out with a really ambitious goal of raising a lot of money for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. And I wonder, how have you done so far?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I appreciate the chance to come on. I feel like we did well. It's been 1 year. I gave myself a year. We've raised just over $150,000. I had set a goal a little higher than that. So at some level, I'm disappointed. But at another level, the ATC has been very generous with their thanks. And it is, tends to be like one of the largest gifts they've ever received. So that's gratifying. And I recently was finishing up some personal notes to people who had donated so I could give everyone thanks for participating. And
Sure.
I was thinking to myself, I don't know a bunch of these people, and that's just really gratifying. And I know that an awful lot of them probably came along and contributed to the challenge because of your podcast and returning to Katahdin podcast. So I really want to give a big shout out to your listeners, to all those people who participated, the people I don't know, and I hope someday I will know, but I just want them to know that I'm really deeply grateful. And I know the ATC is for them participating in the challenge and helping me raise what turns out to be a pretty good number for the ATC, even if I wasn't able to meet my ultimate goal.
I think it's a huge number, Bruce. And in fact, I work for a nonprofit. I work in a nonprofit. I'm on a board of a nonprofit. And when we get a $10,000 grant, we're delighted. So getting over $150,000 is a big, big deal. So I think you should be really, really happy with what you've done. I think hopefully the podcast played a part in it as well. And funnily enough, people are still actually listening to that podcast. We got 200 downloads in one day the other day, which was quite something. And I think what you've done is extraordinary. And I'm so glad you did it for the guys. And I know that you've not been idle since you finished your hike, and you've been writing. And I think you've got some good news to share with the listeners as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you, Steve. I know you took a look at early draft of this. Believe it or not, I'm actually working on 3 writing projects.
Of course you are.
And
man who never sits still, by the way.
I enjoy the writing process. So I always, like an awful lot of through hikers, who like to write, I always figured I'd write my memoir, even if no one wants to read it, because it's a wonderful process to go back through and enjoy and relive the experience. And that has actually been on a bit of a back burner. I think of things, I jot down notes and put them in a file for later. But as you know, when we did the podcast, I was very focused on the mental aspect of hiking and how to manage your mental state, because I think it's the most important thing that will get you to the finish line. And so the more I thought about that, I really think there aren't that many resources that do a good job with that. So I've actually been working very hard on a book to deal with planning and preparation and execution of your hike, with a very intense focus on how every single little decision impacts your mental state and how that's critical to success.
Absolutely.
But the book that's is actually going to be released next month is the one I didn't have any idea I was going to write. And I just came across the idea while I was on the hike last year. And so it's called Platinum Blazing the Appalachian Trail.
That's a new name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Platinum Blazing.
The subtitle is How to Through Hike the AT in 3-star luxury.
I think I saw the cover and you had 5 stars, but crossed out.
Exactly. You have to get the visual. The word 5 is crossed out, so it's 3-star luxury. So, and we're trying to make it. I say we. I'll tell you about my co-author. We're trying to make it tongue-in-cheek, a lot of fun, because we're not trying to suggest that only people with a bunch of money can enjoy the finer experiences off the trail. No. But that's what we're trying to do. Is we've collected, I say Sharkbait, if any of your listeners know Sharkbait, Michael Neiman is a younger hiker who I had met before the hike through emails, and I had followed his blog. He had amazingly similar thoughts about planning and preparation and hiking, and he wrote really well. And I asked him to co-write this with me, so I got a little more perspective from a younger generation as opposed to just those of us with gray hair. So Sharkbait and I have been working on this, and we wanted to launch it in time that some of or hopefully most of the class of 2019 could get the benefit of it. So the book tries to capture what we think are some of the finer premium, luxury, or platinum experiences out there in terms of bed and breakfast, inns, restaurants. And what we've tried to do is, while we sort of almost pay homage to the better traditional hiker destinations. The focus is on premium or platinum. So if your favorite place as a hiker isn't on there, it may be that it's really fun, it's really great, but it's really not platinum. And we've created a list of the best breakfast on the trail, the best inns, the best delis.
Tell me the best breakfast. That's what I want to know always. Which is the best breakfast for you?
This will be, breaking news.
Yes, exactly.
So, and you can't miss this, Steve, on this hike. But we have selected the breakfast at the Quarterway Inn as the best breakfast on the trail.
Where's that? That's better than the one at Mountain Harbor, is it?
No. In fact, it's interesting you would mention that, because Sharkbait and I had a big debate trying to decide on the best breakfast. And
funny.
Mountain Harbor is the runner-up. And
all right.
But Tina, who goes by trail name Chunky, did a through hike and now has a hostel just north of Atkins, Virginia, at the quote-unquote Quarterway mark.
Right.
And it's a wonderful hostel, and she is absolutely a chef, and it's a lot more about the quality of the breakfast: pimento cheese grits, jalapeno biscuits.
I am so going there, man. I tell you,
she's just the best. So it was easy for me to, being a lawyer, I argued Sharkbait on which breakfast should win. So.
Cool.
So now your listeners have got the first of a long list of different winners. We've got, we kind of, again, tongue in cheek say, a hostel by definition isn't platinum. But once you adjust your thinking and think of, a hostel not being a fine premium experience, we then have a chapter on the hostels, and we do select a best hostel and some runner-ups, but we also go in detail as to the criteria that we use to determine these things. And the other thing people should know is that we did a fairly extensive survey of 2017, 2018 through hikers, so that this isn't just two people's opinion. We validated our thinking, and we got a lot of great ideas, and we certainly ended up making selections based on a lot of input from a lot of people we've gotten to know.
That's cool. That's kind of crowdsourcing anyway, and getting you're right. Just getting one person's opinion isn't going to make someone take a half-mile detour or whatever it's going to be to get somewhere. But if it's a number of people have come out in the survey and said, well, there's this and there's that, and if this is generally regarded as a really good section, it's going to be a great little guide to have. How are you going to update it, or are you going to do that?
Well, one of the things that's been so exciting for me about the book is I realized when I came on the idea, I started asking people I was hiking with when I was in Tennessee and Virginia and on, and everyone said, I don't know if they were just being nice, they thought the idea was quite good. And so it dawned on me that, and this will resonate with you because you've said this so many times, it dawned on me that this would be a way for me to stay connected with the trail on an annual basis, because I have to update the book. So cool. Sharkbait and I are going to come up with a 2020, a 2021 edition. We're going to refresh the book every year, because that way, as you know, experience changes from year to year. There's a great hostel in Pennsylvania called Rock and Soul that I think 4 years ago didn't exist.
All right. Wow. I tell you, I'm looking forward to looking at it. You know me. I mean, I made the Camino as easy as I possibly could. And while I've got, I want to keep this a proper hike. And I've had lovely listeners reach out and say they want to help me on the hike. And while I really appreciate a lot of that support, I really want to still be doing a proper hike. So I think there's a balance I need to strike. But certainly, when you are going to get off the trail, I'd love to go into one of these nice places. And I know that I'm not going to name it now, but there's one that I really want to go to, which I know was one of your top hostels as well. So all those different things, I want to experience those things differently to how I experienced it first time round, which is why I think going again makes a lot of sense for me anyway.
Yeah, one of the things we've done, a lot of this information is out there, but it's never been collected in one place. So A couple of things I want to emphasize. One is, even for people on a tight budget, everyone gets off the trail now and then. So in fact, if you're only going to get to do 3 or 4 special treats, don't you want to have some good input as to where to really experience those?
Absolutely.
And I always remember when I did the Camino, there was this one stop in a town that a lot of my friends loved and they raved about it. And I didn't learn about it until I was miles past it. And so
Right.
one thing about a guide like this is it gets you to think ahead of time, if you're a planner like I am, this, hey, when I get to Atkins, I need to have breakfast at the Quarterway Inn. So it's not really meant to be only for people who have a larger budget. And a lot of this is, look, it's all subjective, it's opinionated, but I think the through hikers who read this will really see that there's a universe of opinion, but there's also, the neat thing is people are always finding new and exciting places. Like the best restaurant is something that I'd never heard of, came from two independent friends who did the survey and raved about this place. And I'm not even going to tell you what city it's in, but you're going to get an advanced copy of the book before you leave the trail, so you can look at that.
That's cool.
The other thing we've done is we've collected some, we call them unique or special AT experiences. So there are things like staying at Elmer's, there's the museum, you can spend the night on an alpaca farm, you can do work first day on an organic farm. And we've collected these disparate things into different categories. So part of just enjoying the trip experience is noting that there's not just meals and hostels and bread and breakfast, but there's also, you need to take this Blue Blaze Trail and see this waterfall. And we've identified a very large list of what we think are the best Blue Blaze trails to vista waterfalls. We've categorized them for like 0.1, under 0.5, more than a mile. So people can say, well, this is a side trail that's 0.6, but it's got one of the best views in the Smoky Mountains, so I should take it.
Yeah, very nice. Now, as you know, I'm going, and as I've got you here, and I'm starting in a few days' time. I'm starting next Tuesday. And I'm not a planner at all. I haven't even bought all my gear yet. So what last-minute tips do you think you can give me on my trip coming up? Because I'm starting a month ahead of when I started last year, and it's the same time as you started last year.
Well, to quote Mighty Blue about a year ago this time, I would never, ever, ever go in February.
Did I say that? I don't believe I said that.
I'll go back and find it. I think
I totally believe I said it, yeah.
Cheryl and I were just laughing because she remembered it well, too.
Oh, dear.
Steve, you have talked to so many people, so many really experienced, thoughtful people, and we've certainly spoken a lot. I think you know exactly what you need to do. And you said it in the beginning of this interview, which was take your time, enjoy every day.
Sure.
You know that, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You know that if you run into a friend and you're sitting by a waterfall and it's better to have a 3-hour lunch than to get in those last 6 miles, that's what you want to do. It's,
definitely.
I heard towards the end of my hike something that I think, it certainly wasn't the first time it was said on the trail, but, they said, a through hike is a race and whoever finishes last wins.
That's right.
And so I think you've gotten so many great tips from so many good people you've interviewed for the last couple of years. I think, the key to me, and I don't need to tell you this, is know yourself, figure out which of those tips work best for you. And then, like you say, just enjoy every day. When I finished, I was done. I was through. I was tired of hiking. 6 months later, I wish I was going with you next week.
Oh, man. Well, I'll be passing your way. So if you want to come out for a couple of days and have a hike, love to see you out there. I would.
Cheryl's already said we got to keep an eye on you and come.
Bring Cheryl out as well. Definitely.
She'll definitely come out, and we'll certainly hike a day or two. I don't think we'll get Cheryl to sleep outside with us, but she'll definitely come for a day or two, day hiking. And, you come through Central Virginia, we're not too far away.
Okay, buddy. Well, look, lovely talking to you. And I'm so pleased you've been kept busy, and I'm looking forward to my advanced copy, and you've only got a few days to send it. So I'll probably have to get it via email on a PDF or something like that. But great talking to you, and we will definitely catch up soon. And I hope the book goes well for you. All right?
Yeah, great. Well, and it's really not about making money. We are going to give the proceeds to the ATC. So that is kind of a good way to come full circle with our fundraiser.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that.
No great need. We've got some. We do have some costs to recover, but we really do hope we can use the book to help the trail further.
Okay, buddy. Well, you take it easy, and we'll catch up soon. All right.
All right. Take care and have a great hike.
Cheers, mate. Bye. 150 grand. That is amazing. I'm glad that he shared that he's using the proceeds from his new Platinum Blazing book for the ATC as well. He is a great bloke, and I really enjoyed spending time with him last year on the show. Remember, you can still hear that show wherever you get your podcasts. Last, with my excitement growing about my hike next week, I reached out to Zepex and was lucky enough to get Matt Favreau on the show. We had a few difficulties getting together at first. He was going to see Fleetwood Mac on the Tuesday, and I told him that I'd seen them in 1969 when they were still very much a blues band. The fact that Matt saw them Tuesday reminded me of my age a bit. I suspect that when I climb up my first hill in Georgia, I'll be reminded of my age again next week. Anyway, here's Matt. Now, as many of you know, I recently decided to buy a Zepex duplex tent and a Zepex Arc Blast backpack. So I'm pretty much all in on Zepex at this point. I'm on today with Matt Favreau, or Details apparently. Matt is the brand manager of Zepex. I wanted to learn something about the company and these products that I've bought. Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing well. Nice to be here.
Well, thanks for coming along and chatting to us for a couple of minutes about this. And as I'm sure you know, this is a market that's flooded with product and so on. So I had tons and tons of choices for a tent and a backpack this year. And through a combination of vlogs, listeners, my own research and my own biases, I ended up shelling out a lot of money on these products. So why is this a good move on my part?
Why is it a good move on your part?
Absolutely.
So basically, I think a lot of people who get into backpacking and hiking, they make the same mistakes, and it's a mistake that I made. It's a mistake I've seen a lot of my friends make. And as we start off, we're not sure if we're how into it we are, and we end up buying, heavy equipment and realizing quite quickly, usually, how much we hate it and how much our back hurts and how much our knees hurt and our ankles hurt. And then we end up going through this phase where we do some more research. We might even buy a middleweight, pack or a sleeping bag or tent. And then eventually people who end up in ultralight gear, they end up a lot of times before they get there, they'll spend, 3 times, 4 times the cost. Absolutely. And so a lot of times people will, they'll scoff at the price of a lot of ultralight gear. But the reality is, these are, space age materials. They're super lightweight, and they don't come for free to us. The materials come at quite a premium. At Zepex, we make our gear in the United States right here in our factory in West Melbourne, Florida.
Yeah, I came to your factory the other week, and it was extraordinary to see all these young people. They're mainly young people sitting at sewing machines and working away, diligently. And I love the fact that it's made over here as well. It was really great to see them all there. They all seemed to have this spirit because they were going in and out of the entrance. I was chatting to a guy there, and there was a great spirit of conviviality, I think, within the factory.
Yeah, I mean, over the last few years, we've made some changes which have made the factory, I would say, run a little bit more efficiently, a little smoother. We've done some initiatives to try to keep our employees happy, in terms of making sure they have the right equipment, making sure that our cutting department doesn't let them run out of materials, and in terms of pay increases and things like that. We're really trying to keep the employees happy.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, in our last our town hall meeting in the company, I really was stressing, hey, our gear is made to do cool things. It's used by cool people, and it's used on these just amazing adventures. So it's sometimes it's a little hard, for somebody who's in backpack final assembly. They're just putting a back and a front together all day, but it's the final product that you're putting together. It's going on these epic adventures. It's going to Nepal. It's hiking the Appalachian Trail. It's the Tour de Mont Blanc in the Alps. These packs are going all over the world to do these amazing things, and your hands and your work is attached to it. And I was really trying to just remind people how awesome that really is.
It is, and really, it's lovely to see a relatively fledgling company. So let's go back to the beginning of Zepex. How did it get started, and what was the initial mission of the company?
the initial mission. So how it got started was our owner and our founder and lead designer, Joe Valesco. He was getting ready to graduate college, and he decided, like a lot of people do, he wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail.
Sure.
But he's a little finicky when it comes to buying things. He's very particular. So he went to, the local outfitters like most of us do. And he just did not like anything that he found. He was like, this is too heavy. This is too big. It has too many buckles, too many straps. And he's like, I could do better. And he wasn't doing it for anybody else other than himself. He had a selfish goal here. And this was like, he wanted his Appalachian Trail through hike to be successful. And he didn't want to have a heavy gear weighing him down.
Sure.
So he made his own gear, and he got on a bus and went down to Georgia, and he started the AT, and he realized his gear wasn't that great after a little while. So he went home and he made a second version, and then made a third version. And, by the time he got to the end, he was pretty happy with what he had. And a lot of people were like, man, you need to make this and sell this. Nobody's making anything like this. No one's doing anything like this. And you could really help the community. And so almost begrudgingly, he started making some gear.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He started making some gear in his house, in his apartment after work when he got off the trail. And, slowly but surely the demand grew, and the demand grew. And so that was 2005 when he really started Z-Packs.
Right.
But by 2010, it became a full-time gig. And that's when I came along as the first employee, working with Joe and his wife in the garage.
Very cool. I love those origin stories to how it got to where it is today. And interestingly, when I asked my listeners, because, I did the AT in 2014, and it was my gear was very heavy, and my pack was over 5 pounds, for example. But when I asked my listeners for, and I'm going again this year, so when I asked my listeners for advice on what sort of things to get, the duplex was the most suggested. But it was also it seemed to divide listeners totally, the ones who took the trouble to write in. To many, it was the tent to get, absolutely no equivocation whatever. Yet a bunch of others saw it completely differently. Do you see this in your own studies? And do you explain it by the price, or is that the issue? Because when I talked about the price on the show, I said, when you think $600 for 6 months in the wood, $100 a month is a bloody bargain, especially if you come back with it and you can use it again and again and again.
Yeah, I mean, the price is definitely an obstacle for a lot of people. You got to be really, really serious about backpacking if you're going to buy a $600 tent. Yeah. I think really, like you really hit the nail on the head. Basically, it's one of those things where if you're going to be sleeping in something basically every day for 6 months continuously, it's your home, and you want to make sure that it's going to do the job of protecting you from the rain and the wind and the elements and the bugs. The duplex does that very, very well. It's become basically the go-to ultralight hiking tent at this point. It's just definitely. It's everywhere when you go out and you look. I think maybe with like a lot of ultralight equipment, some people may not be ready for it, but it's one of those things. You're probably the first car you want to drive is not a Ferrari, because you'll step on the gas and you'll spin it out and run into something. Yeah. So you might, a little bit of experience, doesn't hurt. You need to figure out what you truly need and what you don't need before you get out there sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think if you follow the setup, instructions, and you set it up correctly, I mean, you shouldn't really run into any issues.
I tell you, I spent the last 4 or so days trying out the tent. I went into the woods to try it out, obviously. And the first thing, obviously, the weight is a massive thing for me, because obviously now I'm 66. I want to make sure that I can get to the end by carrying as small a weight as possible. But I noticed a number of things about it, because I actually ordered both the items. I ordered as well as the titanium tent stakes. So I ordered the tent, the stakes, and the backpack. And when the package turned up a couple of days later, and kudos for that, by the way, getting it to me so quickly, I didn't immediately open it. I assumed it was just the backpack because it was so darn light. I was shocked, and I'm really not exaggerating. I'm totally shocked when I opened the package and saw the tent was there as well. How do you manage that? I mean, it's a really critical balance, I guess, between weight and durability.
Yeah, I mean, really, our bread and butter right now, and when it comes in terms of unique selling proposition, what separates us is really we're the lightest of the light. And so when we say that, what we really mean there is that we sell the lightest functional version of each gear item that's available, right? So
Sure.
so when it comes to the tent, first off, it has to do the job, right? Like if it doesn't do the job, we're not going to sell it. So
That's right.
what we're doing is we're leaving off as many bells and whistles that we can while still providing you everything that you need. And so it's really just pattern, just how the patterns come together, the way things are reinforced, the way things are sealed, the type of buckles we use, the type of cord or webbing that we use. Every single one of those things is given like a high priority, because at the end of the day, we want to make the lightest functional version of everything that we offer. So it is a balance, which is funny. There's so we used to have a backpack called the Zero, and it used to be available in 1.43 ounce per square yard DCF material. And so you put it out there for a few years and you see how it wears and how it breaks down. And then we eventually had to concede, basically, that this material was not suitable for through hiking. You really were going to have a difficult time completing a through hike in it. Like, you could do it. We've done it. Joe did it. But you'll have some duct tape on your pack at the end, and it's just how it's going to wear, right?
Yeah,
and so we switched, and then basically we came out with we modified that a little bit and made it out of some thicker material, and we call it the Nero, nearly the Zero, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so
Appropriate.
Yeah. And so what we saw there was, as a lot of upstart companies are popping up, we saw a handful of companies start to offer basically the old Zero out of that same material that we used to make it out of. And it only took them about a year and a half before they made the same realization that we did, that this material is not suitable for long distance hiking because, it wears out too quickly. And so when we talk about the lightest functional version, that's really what we're talking about, is like creating the lightest version that's actually going to do the job, that's not going to wear out. And we know that because we've not only are we personally hikers and go on quite a bit of adventures ourselves, but we have over a decade of experience with these materials and these patterns and these designs.
I can tell you there's a number of things, a couple of observations. So hopefully you'll be happy to listen to them. I loved how much space there is inside there. That was another big surprise to me. So I had a single tent when I first went. This is a proper double tent, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the vestibules are huge, both of them. There's vestibules on the other side. So it's got quite a big footprint. So I'm hopeful that's going to be okay in the woods. It's a quite bigger footprint than I had before. But I really enjoyed that. I had a little bit of condensation, but then, I'm in Florida, so I'm not terribly sure what it's going to be like when I get out on the trail itself. But so I'll work out what that's like. But the condensation wasn't too much of an issue for me either. Yeah, but the size of it is massive, and it is fairly transparent, which I got the spruce green. It's not a real problem to me, but has that been an issue for you? You might be able to address in the future, or is it one of the trade-offs for the weight?
No, I mean, that's just a byproduct of that type of material, to be honest with you.
Sure.
If you get the 0.67 camo, which provides the most privacy, that's not an issue at all. And even realistically, the 0.51 ounce per square yard, the standard, which is available in olive and blue, when customers bring up this issue, I just try to be real with them. I'm like, when do you set up your tent? At the end of the day, usually. So it's like just before dusk. And when do you break it down? At the beginning of the day, around dawn, just after dawn. So it's like the majority of the time you're in the tent, it's either dark or very dim, lighting. And you really, even in the light, you really can't see through it. You can see vague shapes, but it's not like if you were like totally undressed.
No,
people are going to see all your favorite little bits.
All your bits. Yeah. Now, you know what? It wasn't a problem for me. I was just saying this is what I observed. Mm-hmm. And is there a point beyond which when the balance shifts and it makes a lighter product unsustainable? Because I think is it 19 or 21 ounces? I can't quite recall what it was.
19, the tent. We actually had switched the type of tape that we used to seal our seams, and it actually brought the weight down from 21 to 19. Wow. So yours is probably 21 in the spruce, but yeah.
I'm carrying 2 more ounces than I need to. That's terrible.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit more privacy and shade, and peace of mind too.
That's fine.
Peace of mind
Yeah.
in terms of
you're right.
the thicker material.
How low do you think you can go on as far as tent's concerned?
Yeah, 0.51 ounce. We used to have, we still sell it, but it's in a different, a thicker weight now. We used to sell a pocket tarp out of 0.34 ounce per square yard material, and we marketed it strictly as an emergency tarp because realistically, it's not, that weight just could not sustain a through hike. You say that, and there's always somebody who can prove you wrong, but I'm talking about the typical customer is not going to be able to sustain a through hike with that weight of material. And so we, just like the old Nero pack, we kind of abandoned that and just went up to the 0.51 ounce per square yard material for the pocket tarp. We want to make a product that's going to last, the customers can count on, and that can do the job. And so I think in terms of shelters, 0.51 ounce per square yard is the lowest you can go.
But in terms of future aspirations for the company, is the basic tenet that you are looking to be getting the lightest possible tent you can that's viable for a through hike? And do you think there's any leeway to get down lower than 19 ounces? Is that possible, do you think?
Yeah, of course. So like, for example, so we have our solo tent is called the Pleximid, right? And so and it weighs 14 ounces, like 14.7 or 14.8. I don't remember off the top of my head right now. So what we did is we worked together with somebody and we created a smaller line lock, adjustable line lock, which allowed us to use thinner cord. So that the switching out the line locks to switching out the cord ended up saving us basically almost an ounce of weight. So now that same tent, with simply changing the cord and the line locks that are on it, is now 13 ounces and change, which is like absolutely insane. Like exactly. And so, and that's what I'm personally using right now. It's available.
Really?
It's available in a beta version on the website right now. If you go to the Pleximid page, there's a link to it. And it's just, so that's one of those things. It's like you can keep pushing the limits in different ways. So, just in this conversation, I mentioned how we were able to switch the adhesive on the tape to save weight.
Sure.
How we were able to switch the buckle, and then in turn that buckle allowed us to switch the cord. We didn't switch the material, the main material that the tent was made out of, but we were still able to take basically an ounce of weight out of it. Amazing.
I'm still going back and forth between whether or not I'm going to take the Art Blast to start with in this winter weather, because I suspect I might need more clothes than I originally had planned. So I might take an old pack with me for the first month or so, and then get the Art Blast sent to me. But I might try the whole hike with the Art Blast. There was one other question I wanted to actually ask you while I remember. It was future developments and what you may be doing, coming from Z-Packs in the future. Is there anything you can tell us about now?
Yeah, so something that's not necessarily the future, but is relatively the present is we just recently released our women's clothing line. And, that's just something that had been on our to-do list for quite a while. And we just noticed that the thru hiker surveys were showing that women were now comprising over 40% of long distance hikers.
That's amazing.
And it's just one of those things. It was like, why is nobody like serving this niche of the ultralight community? So we decided to give it a little bit more precedent, because it was just time. So we recently released our women's rain jacket, women's rain pants, and a women's wind shell, because it was about time that women had these options. We just recently filmed a little commercial with the lady who designed the clothing line for us, who's worked for us for a few years. She's had like over 50 years of like sewing experience. She used to make her own gear when she used to go on the Sierras, when she used to live out in California. So it's like we really took a woman's perspective and approach to the way we design these patterns. We wanted to make sure they specifically fit women and they were designed for women. We kind of have been using a little tagline around the clothes, like design for adventure, design for you, because, that's really, really what happened here is we took somebody with a ton of experience in designing clothing, especially women's clothing as well, to really like lock in the right fit and the right sizing for women and make sure they had like clothing that really represented them and they weren't stuck just wearing men's clothing.
I certainly noticed when I started the trail in 2014, there was about 25% of women to start, but at the end it was more like 50-50 because a lot of the men dropped out, but nearly every woman I met finished. So they're in it for the long haul. And the fact that the starting through hikers now are up to 40% is amazing growth. So I think that's a great development for the trail.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so, I mean, basically we're going to continue that as well. We're currently working, which we've been working for a while, but now we've gave it some precedence, like a synthetic insulated jacket and a down insulated jacket as well. And when those are released, they're going to be released in women's sizes and men's sizes simultaneously. So I mean, this is something going forward with all clothing that we make that you're going to be seeing.
Exciting times.
Yeah, it is. You got to serve that whole community.
Cool. So I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me. I'm really looking forward to using these products, and my experience with using them so far has been great. And I will be telling people, and just so everybody knows, I'm not sponsored for any of this, by the way. I just want you to know this is my choice and this is why I chose it. And I was really impressed with the time they took to measure me up for my backpack, which really helped me as well. So I thank you for coming on and giving me your time.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, thank you for having me, and obviously we're happy that you chose some Z-Packs gear, and we're happy to follow you along on your through hike, and hope that's a success as well.
Cool, appreciate it. Okay, Matt, we'll take it easy, and hopefully I'll speak again to you sometime.
All right, cheers.
Cheers, bye. I've got to tell you, my first impression of Z-Packs has been really favourable, and I think that Matt added to my understanding of the company that I pretty much trusted for my immediate future needs. I've told him that I'll be telling you all about how the pack and the tent are working for me, along with my other gear as I go along. So that's it. The next time you hear from me, I'll be somewhere in Georgia, hopefully warm and tolerably dry. I will have met plenty of new friends. I will have struggled up endless hills, and the lactic acid in my legs will be burning me excruciatingly. I cannot bloody wait. I'll also have completely shaved my head and my face for a new look and the one I had in 2014. I know it's not a great look, but I wanted something to link the two hikes. I'm excited that you'll be following along, and if you'd like to see pictures and the odd video, join or like the Hiking Radio Network Facebook and Instagram pages. I guess I'll be putting out the videos on my YouTube channel, so check that out as well. That one is under the name of Steve Adams, so I'm going to put a link in the show notes to all of those pages. Lastly, please come and see me on the trail, or at least in a trail town. I'll post where I'm going to be, and I would love to share a beer and trail stories with any of you. I'll see you next week, back out on the trail.